Hello children. So today we are starting the lecture series Our Environment, and with this lecture you will be able to revise and recall what we have discussed so far. So let us start. In our environment, first we need to understand what is an environment. For that, let us understand. So environment is everything that surrounds us on earth is environment, whether it is a physical or chemical factor or all the organisms which are present around us. Whatever is surrounding us on this earth is environment. In other words, the complex of physical, chemical and biotic factors like climate, soil and all living things that act upon organisms constitute the environment. Now what is ecosystem? So ecosystem is a self-sustaining system where all the organisms in a given area together interact with the non-living constituents of that area or the environment, and thus an ecosystem consists of biotic components like all the living beings and abiotic components like physical factors, temperature, rainfall, wind, soil and minerals. So environment is all those surrounding conditions containing living and non-living things, but ecosystem is a complete system where not only those living and non-living things are present, but they also interact with each other, and that's how the life exists. So let us learn more about ecosystem. So what are the types of ecosystem? Ecosystem can be natural, such as forests, ponds and lakes, which we observe daily, and they have been present since the evolution started on this earth. And man-made or artificial ecosystems like gardens, aquarium and crop fields. And here it is important to remember, if something is man-made, the human beings are responsible for its maintenance as well. And this difference will become more clear as we move ahead. So here, look at this. This is a forest and this is a pond and the adjoining areas which are natural ecosystems. This pond might be having a complete system of various organisms, and the abiotic conditions of this water and the air and the oxygen dissolved in this water, all those abiotic factors. Similarly, this in itself is a complete system and it is a self-sustaining system. So it is going to remain like this on its own, even if we do not make any effort. But the only thing that we need to do is not make efforts to destroy them. So if we are adding pollutants to this water body, if we are cutting the trees continuously, we are removing the mountains one after the other to make roads and all that, then of course they will change. But if we are not interfering, these systems are very well able to take care of themselves. They can sustain themselves. But what happens in the man-made or artificial system? So this is seen from Finding Nemo, where the aquarium has been shown. So suppose there are many fish or aquatic organisms kept in an aquarium, and it is a man-made system, so we have to make continuous efforts to maintain this system in a sustainable condition. And what if we do not make those efforts? What will happen then? This happens. You can see the water has become turbid and it is so dirty. How? Because this is not a natural system, and unlike the natural system, artificial system cannot clean itself. We have to clean it regularly. So man-made systems are something which require continuous maintenance efforts from man or humans, because they are not having all the components of the ecosystem which actually make it self-sustaining. Now, there was a aquarium related activity in the book which was followed by few important questions, and let us clarify those doubts first. So first question was, can we leave the aquarium as such after we set it up? Why does it have to be cleaned once in a while? And do we have to clean ponds or lakes in the same manner? So the answer to the first question is no. We cannot leave the aquarium as such because it is not a natural system and it requires continuous maintenance. So maybe we need to add food for the fish, we need to keep it clean regularly, change the water, and put oxygen tank in order to provide oxygen in the water. Also, why does it have to be cleaned once in a while? Because we have to remove the waste materials. Now the waste material could be in the form of dead parts of the bodies of aquatic animals, and more importantly the nitrogenous metabolic waste which are generated, and mostly the aquatic organisms excrete ammonia. Ammonia is very toxic uh, compound, and if it is present in the water body and its amount is slowly increasing, then it is going to be toxic to those organisms which are present in that water body, that is aquarium. So we need to continuously remove the waste from the aquarium. And do we have to clean ponds and lakes also? No, because ponds and lakes are natural ecosystems and decomposers are present in those ecosystems which decompose the waste material and dead organic material, so the ecosystem can clean itself because it is a natural ecosystem. But aquarium needs to be cleaned because it is an artificial ecosystem. So after this, let us move on and understand what are the components of ecosystem. So now components of ecosystem are abiotic components, which consist of non-living components, and biotic components or living components. So first let us understand about the abiotic components. Now these are the non-living components and they can be either a chemical or physical presence. How? Common abiotic factors are atmosphere, which provide us essential gases, and various chemical elements which are present in the soil and which are dissolved from the rocks and are available in the water bodies as well, and then temperature, wind, humidity, sunlight, soil conditions, etc., and more importantly water, the very basis of life. So light, how do these abiotic components affect an ecosystem? We will understand that. So light exposure affects the temperature of that particular area. So areas which are receiving more duration of light, sunlight, are warmer. Then water. Water is essential to the survival because 70% of the cytoplasm is made up of water, and life cannot exist without it. So every organism requires water, and availability of water is where you will find biodiversity. But yes, every organism requires a different amount of water. Like xerophytic or desert animals require very little amount of water because they have evolved in that way. But other animals require a large quantity of water, and aquatic animals completely spend their life within the water. Now, how atmosphere affects the ecosystem? So atmosphere is that part of the earth which sustains life. And how? It provides essential gases, oxygen for the respiration process, carbon dioxide for the photosynthesis, which gives food to the entire ecosystem. Now, chemical elements, how are they important? Because elements form compounds and compounds make all the matter. And in ecosystem, if biomass is to be produced even through the photosynthesis, or when we eat something, some biomass becomes a part of our own body. What is all that made up of? It is ultimately made up of elements. So chemicals are also very important abiotic factors. And then wind. So wind speed and direction affects the temperature and humidity and what kind of rainfall that area will receive. All those parameters are depending upon the wind also, and wind speed and direction both. So you can see that how the abiotic components affect any ecosystem and actually give shape to that particular ecosystem. Now let us move on to the biotic components or biotic factors of the ecosystem. So in nutshell, remember all living beings are under the biotic components of ecosystem. And to remember it, all the plants, animals and microorganisms together constitute biotic components of the ecosystem. But all living organisms is a very vague term. We need to be specific that what are the roles of each type of organisms in that system. So let us understand it in more detail. So biotic components which constitute all living beings can be further categorized into producers, consumers and decomposers. Now producers are those which can produce something. So this category is very exclusive and it is taken by green plants and cyanobacteria which can do photosynthesis, because only through the photosynthesis the energy of sunlight can be converted into chemical energy and some food or glucose, starch, something like that can be formed or produced. That's why only green plants and cyanobacteria can do this, as they contain chlorophyll. Now consumers, as the name is telling, that those which consume the food produced by the producers. So all the other organisms which cannot do photosynthesis, how are they going to get their nutrition? They derive their nutrition from producers, either directly or indirectly. So by directly I mean those organisms which directly feed upon the green plants. Okay, but those animals which will eat other animal which has eaten the plant will be indirectly consuming the producer. For example, fox. Suppose a rabbit is eating a green plant, then it is a consumer. Okay, but it is directly eating the green plant. But fox is eating the rabbit which has eaten the grass. So fox is actually indirectly eating the grass. So be very much clear about these ideas, these concepts of various categories of consumers, which we will discuss in a short moment. But first, let us understand the third category of biotic components, which are decomposers. Very important components, as we have learned from the aquarium activity, that if the decomposers are not present, then the aquarium system cannot sustain itself for a very long time, as there will be buildup of various waste products. So they have a very important job to do. So these are the organisms which derive their nutrition from dead and decaying matter. And how does it happen? The dead matter needs to be physically broken down into smaller pieces, and then it will be chemically or enzymatically decomposed further. So first, or the physical breaking down is done by a number of organisms like earthworms, vultures, which are known as scavengers. So they break down the food and they take whatever is necessary for their own growth, and after that whatever is left will be enzymatically decomposed by the fungi and various bacteria, in which process they will also get some share of their own energy, but the remaining simpler inorganic compounds which will be generated through this decomposition process, that will be a part of soil, that will be a part of air, and thus nutrient recycling will take place. So decomposers not only reduce the biomass which results from the death, but they also help in the nutrient recycling so that the system can go on and on. Now let us focus on consumers, because there are further subcategories of consumers. So as we have just discussed, they can directly or indirectly feed upon the producers. We can further categorize them into three categories for more clarity. So primary consumers. So these are those organisms which directly consume the producers or the green plants, like grasshopper, rabbit, cow, deer, all the herbivores basically. Now what are secondary consumers? Those organisms which feed on primary consumers. For example, if the grasshopper is the primary consumer and frog is eating grasshopper, then frog is a secondary consumer. If rabbit is eating grass and the fox is eating rabbit, then fox is secondary consumer. And cow is eating grass, but leopard is eating cow, then it is secondary consumer. Then what are the tertiary consumers? As primary, secondary and tertiary terms itself are self-explanatory, tertiary consumers are those organisms which feed on secondary consumers. Okay? For example, if grasshopper has eaten the grass, it is the primary one. That grasshopper was eaten by a frog, secondary consumer, and that frog was taken up by a snake. Then snake is your tertiary consumer. And suppose there is grasshopper eaten by a frog and that frog was eaten by some big bird, then bird is also your tertiary consumer. Okay. And human beings are always at the top of the game. So they will not only consume the plants directly, but they will also feed upon the secondary consumers. As you know that humans consume meat of various animals, those animals which actually feed on plants. So human beings are tertiary consumers or the top consumer. So once again, biotic components can be further subdivided into producer, consumer and decomposer categories, and consumers can be further categorized into primary, secondary and tertiary, out of which primary consumers are the herbivores, secondary and tertiary consumers are the meat eaters, and among the meat eaters there is another differentiation of omnivores. Omnivores are those, like human beings, which can feed on plant as well as animal based food items. So now let us understand these things once more, that few important words and their definitions which are of significance. What are herbivores? Herbivores are those consumers which eat plants, just like deer and cow and bison, buffalo, rabbit, grasshopper. All these directly consume green plants. Then carnivores. These are those consumers which exclusively eat other animals. So those are flesh eaters. If they are eating other animals, then they are flesh eaters. They are not herbivores. And then there is a third category of omnivores. So these are those consumers which can eat both plant and animal based diets. So this is raccoon. Raccoons often go through the dustbins and they eat whatever is over there, whether it is vegetable waste, whether it is leftover meat, they will eat everything. And human beings, this is a salad plate, salmon salad. So you can see a lot of strawberries, green leaves, and this is salmon meat. So human beings are also omnivores. And other than raccoons and human beings, cockroaches, bears, these are also omnivorous animals. So this is all for this lecture. In the next lecture, we are going to learn about food chain and why such a chain exists in the ecosystem. So please revise these points, complete your notes, and we will meet in the next lecture with the food chain. Thank you.